The night smelled of smoke and blood. The moon, once silver and proud above the treetops, hung low, stained crimson as though it, too, mourned the massacre unfolding below. Screams echoed through the valley as warriors clashed, fur tearing against fur, claws shredding flesh. Fire licked the proud banners of the royal pack, turning their crest, the golden wolf crown, into a heap of blackened ash. A little girl clung to her mother's hand, her small body trembling as the chaos roared around them. The queen's white gown was torn, streaked with soot and blood, yet her voice remained steady as she crouched to meet her daughter's eyes. "Listen to me," she whispered, pulling the child closer. "You must never speak your name, not here, not ever. Promise me." "But Mama, promise." Her mother's hands cupped her cheeks, shaking now despite her fierce tone. "The blood in your veins is both gift and curse. They will hunt you for it. If you want to live, you must bury it so deep even your own reflection forgets it." The child's lips trembled, but she nodded. A tear slid down her cheek, cutting a pale line through the soot. The queen's eyes softened with a desperate love. She pressed a kiss to her daughter's forehead, then shoved her toward the shadows of the forest. "Run, do not stop, no matter what you hear, and remember, your name dies tonight." The girl stumbled into the undergrowth just as a feral snarl split the air. She looked back once, only once, and saw the silhouette of her father, the king, shift into his massive wolf form to shield his mate. Fire roared around them. Enemies swarmed like shadows with gleaming teeth. Her mother's last scream carved itself into her memory, branding her soul, and then silence, broken only by the distant crackle of burning timber and the thunder of her small feet pounding through the dark forest. Branches clawed her arms as she ran, her breath hitching, heart shattering with every step that carried her further from the life she had known. She ran until her lungs burned, until the cries of her pack faded into a haunting echo. At last she collapsed by a stream, her chest heaving. She curled into herself, shivering in the night, whispering the vow she didn't yet understand. "I won't tell," she murmured into the dirt. "I'll never tell. I'll never be her again." The stars above blinked coldly, indifferent to her suffering. That night, the royal bloodline was believed to be extinguished. But hidden among the shadows, a child survived, bearing a secret that would one day ignite kingdoms, unravel bonds, and shatter the fate of an alpha who would recognize what she could never outrun. The last heir closed her eyes, and with them, the world of the royal pack died. Morning mist curled along the dirt paths of Red Hollow Pack, softening the sharp edges of a world that had never softened for her. She carried a basket of kindling against her hip, head bowed, hoping to slip past the gossiping wolves by the well. But whispers always followed her, even when her steps were silent. "Look at her," one muttered loud enough to cut. "No family, no name. She's lucky Alpha Rowan even lets her stay." "Lucky," another scoffed. "She eats from scraps, sleeps in a shack, and still thinks she belongs among us." The words stung, but she had learned long ago to keep her face still, unreadable. If they only knew the truth, that she had once been a princess with servants bowing at her feet, that the blood in her veins was worth more than all their sneers combined, they would not dare. But truth was a blade too sharp to wield. So she let the lie of anonymity wrap around her like armor. When she reached the pack house steps, she froze. A messenger wolf, panting from travel, stood before Alpha Rowan. His voice was urgent, his words carrying across the courtyard. "The Alpha of Blackridge commands all packs to gather by the next full moon. Attendance is not a request, it is law." A ripple of unease spread through the wolves. Blackridge. The name alone silenced laughter, stiffened spines. That pack was known for its power, its ruthless alpha who bore scars said to be carved by the moon itself. She felt her pulse quicken, though she could not say why. Rowan's face hardened. "Prepare the young and the strong," he ordered. "No one is excused," the wolves by the well gasped. "Even her," one whispered, eyes darting toward the girl clutching her basket. Rowan's gaze cut like steel. "Everyone." Her throat tightened. She wanted to protest, to sink deeper into the shadows where she had built her fragile peace. But fate had a way of dragging her into light she did not want. That night, as she lay on her cot in the small wooden shed at the edge of the village, The words replayed in her mind. A gathering, all packs united under one roof. The thought churned her stomach with dread. She pressed her hands against her chest, feeling the frantic beat of her heart. What if someone looked too closely? What if the wrong eyes recognized what she had sworn to bury? The fireflies outside blinked against the dark, tiny sparks in an ocean of night. She stared at them until sleep claimed her, but even in dreams, she could not escape the truth her mother had carved into her soul. Never speak your name. Never let them see the crown that bleeds beneath your skin. The night of the gathering arrived beneath a swollen silver moon. Wolves from neighboring packs filled the grand clearing, voices overlapping in a sea of sound. The air thrummed with tension, the scent of dominance and rivalry so thick it pressed against her lungs. She kept to the edges, clutching her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders. If she remained invisible, maybe she could survive the night. But invisibility was a fragile shield. Well, if it isn't Red Hollow's charity case. A sneering voice sang. Selene, daughter of a higher, Anking Beta, stepped into her path with cruel satisfaction. Her silken gown shimmered with moonlight, her smile sharper than fangs. Did you actually think you belonged here? The girl lowered her gaze. I came because Alpha Rowan commanded it. Laughter bubbled from Selene and her companions. Of course you did. Like a good little stray. Selene's hand darted forward, plucking at the shawl, exposing the threadbare dress beneath. Look at her, dressed like a servant in a hall of royalty. The surrounding crowd chuckled, whispers spreading like wildfire. Heat crawled up her neck, but she held herself still, refusing to give them the satisfaction of tears. Then the air shifted. A hush rippled across the clearing as he entered, Alpha Kale of Blackridge. He moved like a storm, his dark presence parting the crowd without effort. Broad, shouldered, scarred, his sharp gaze burned beneath the torchlight. Every wolf instinctively bowed their head as he passed, everyone except her, frozen under the sudden weight of his attention. His eyes locked onto hers. It was not a glance, it was a collision. Her breath caught, the humiliation of a moment ago drowned beneath the unnerving intensity of his stare. She felt as if he could peel back her skin and see the blood that ran beneath, the secrets stitched into her very bones. Selene's smirk faltered. She followed his gaze, realization flashing across her features. With venom sharpened by jealousy, she shoved the girl toward the open space. This one, Selene called loudly, voice dripping with mockery. She doesn't even have a name worth speaking. Why waste the Alpha's gaze on a nobody? The crowd roared with cruel laughter. Her knees threatened to buckle, but pride, old, buried royal pride, flared for a heartbeat. She straightened, chin trembling but lifted. Kale's expression did not change, yet his wolf eyes lingered a fraction too long, the silence between them heavy enough to smother the mocking voices around her. And when he finally turned away, it was not dismissal, it was promise. A promise that this humiliation was only the beginning. The echoes of laughter still clung to her skin like nettles as the gathering carried on, music and chatter weaving through the night. She retreated to the farthest shadows, wishing she could vanish into the trees, but no matter how deep she tried to sink, his gaze followed Alpha Kale. He stood at the head of the assembly, towering over the other leaders. The firelight caught the scars slashing across his jaw, remnants of battles won and curses endured. His presence was more than dominance. It was gravity, pulling eyes, hearts, and fear toward him, and yet he was looking at her. The bond whispered between them, faint but insistent. She felt it like a spark beneath her skin, dangerous and impossible. No, not him, not anyone, I can't. When the feast ended, she tried to slip away. But the moment she turned toward the forest, his voice cut through the noise. You, stay. Her body stilled. The word wasn't shouted, but it carried the weight of an Alpha command. Slowly she turned, her breath shallow. He dismissed the others with a curt gesture, and soon it was only the two of them, separated by firelight and silence. What's your name? His voice was deep, rough, the kind that rumbled in one's chest long after it was heard. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Her mother's last command screamed in her memory, never speak it, never. I asked you a question. He took a step closer, his dark eyes scanning her face, searching. Her throat tightened. I don't have one worth remembering. His brows furrowed, his wolf bristling beneath his skin. He inhaled, sharp and deliberate, as though scenting her very soul. His jaw clenched. "You're lying." Her stomach dropped. He circled her slowly, like a predator studying prey, though his steps carried something more complicated than hunger. His wolf stirred inside him, claws scraping against control. "Mate," the word reverberated through him, primal and undeniable. His hand flexed at his side, fighting the urge to reach for her, to claim what fate whispered. But she stood rigid, eyes downcast, every line of her body begging him not to see her. "What are you hiding?" His voice dropped, quieter, more dangerous. "No wolf trembles at my gaze the way you do, unless they carry secrets." Her chest constricted. She forced herself to meet his eyes just long enough to summon defiance. "Maybe I tremble because you're a cursed alpha with too much power and too little mercy." The air thickened between them. For a heartbeat, he almost smiled. Dark, humorless, but amused at her boldness. Then he leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. "You can run from the others," he murmured, voice low and edged with possession. "But you can't run from me." Her heart thundered. She stumbled back, desperate for distance, but his words clung like chains. Because deep inside, she already knew he was right. The next evening, the gathering resumed beneath banners swaying in the night wind. Drums thundered, wolves danced, and every corner of the courtyard burned with firelight. Yet beneath the revelry lurked the presence of one man, one alpha whose gaze had not left her since the night before. She lingered at the edge again, pretending to busy herself with serving trays and cups, but it was useless. Kale's shadow followed, his scarred jaw grim, his eyes a storm, and then, before all, he spoke, "You." His voice silenced the courtyard, conversations faltered, heads turned, step forward, her chest squeezed. Every instinct screamed to disappear, but alphas did not ask twice. Her legs carried her forward, trembling with each step until she stood in the circle of firelight. Kale's eyes burned into her. "Your name," he commanded. The world seemed to tilt. The drums faded, the laughter dissolved, until all she could hear was her mother's last whisper. "Never speak it. Promise me." Her lips parted, but the word refused to come. Her silence stretched, heavy and suspicious. Selene, ever eager to pour salt on wounds, sneered from the sidelines. "What's wrong, stray? Forget your own name." Laughter rippled through the crowd, sharp as blades. Kale did not laugh. His jaw hardened. "Your name," he repeated, the force of command lacing his tone. Her pulse pounded in her ears. To reveal the truth would be to unmask everything, but to remain silent was to invite suspicion. So she breathed once, steadying herself, and whispered, "Call me what you will, it is enough." Gasps spread through the circle. Wolves exchanged wary glances. To defy an alpha, even in words, was madness. Kale studied her, his gaze narrowing. For a long moment he said nothing, only letting the silence grow unbearable. Then, almost imperceptibly, he leaned back, though his eyes never released her. "You think clever words will shield you," he murmured, just loud enough for the crowd to hear, but secrets rot in darkness, they always rise. Her stomach twisted. His wolf knew. Maybe not her bloodline, not yet, but something inside him sensed the truth she carried. The drums resumed, conversation hesitantly flowed again, but the atmosphere was fractured. Every glance burned hotter, whispers sharper. She had not been unmasked, but she had been marked. And when she dared a final glance at Kale, she found his eyes still locked on her, not with curiosity, but with certainty. He knew she was hiding something, and he would not stop until he ripped it from her. The forest was quieter than the revelry of the gathering, the hush of leaves trembling in the night wind. She slipped away after the ceremony, desperate to breathe without eyes on her, desperate to let the pounding of her heart fade. But he followed. Alpha Kale moved through the shadows like a predator who had never once failed a hunt. She heard his footsteps before she felt his presence, but when she turned, he was already there, too close, too commanding. Running again, his voice was low, almost amused, though the heat in his eyes burned with something darker. She stiffened. "I only wanted air." He stepped closer, and the scent of him, iron, pine, and something distinctly his wrapped around her. Her wolf stirred, shivering with recognition, and she clenched her fists to smother it. "You feel it too," he said, not a question, but a truth. His gaze dragged over her as though he could trace the bond by sight alone. The pull, the bond. Her throat tightened. Mate, the word quivered at the edge of her soul, her wolf howling for it, but she forced her body still. "You're imagining things," she whispered. Cale's jaw clenched. He reached out suddenly, his hand catching her wrist, holding her firm. Heat flared where his skin touched hers, a current that shot up her arm and into her chest. She gasped despite herself. "Don't lie to me," he growled, voice roughened by something primal. The bond doesn't lie. For one heartbeat, she let herself feel it. The fire, the hunger, the terrifying comfort of belonging. Her pulse raced, her wolf rising to meet his with a desperate cry. But then memory struck. Fire, blood, her mother's dying whisper. Her royal crest burning to ash, she wrenched her hand free. "I can't. Whatever you think you feel, I cannot be yours." His eyes darkened, his wolf bristling. "Cannot or will not," her breath caught. She turned away, clutching her arms around herself like armor. Both. The silence stretched, taut with danger and desire. She thought he might press further, demand, command. But instead his voice dropped, quieter than she had ever heard it. "You can run from me, little wolf, but you can't run from fate." Her knees weakened, though she stood tall, forcing herself not to look back. She walked away, deeper into the shadows, every step a war between longing and fear. Behind her, Cale's wolf snarled inside him, furious at her retreat. Yet he let her go, his gaze burning with one promise that echoed into the night. She might deny the bond, but denial would never break it. And one way or another, she would return. The moon rode high when she returned to the pack's settlement, her heartbeat still tangled in the echo of Cale's touch. She tried to drown it in silence, but silence gave her no mercy. Every nerve in her body burned with what she refused to admit, and the whispers had already begun. She felt them before she heard them, eyes lingering longer, conversations halting when she entered. The wolves were predators, but they were also gossipers. A girl with no name who defied an alpha, who walked away from his touch without punishment, that was not natural, that was dangerous. Selene, of course, stoked the flames. She leaned in close to the pack's younger wolves, voice sweet and venomous. You saw how she refused him. No wolf in their right mind would reject Alpha Cale, unless she isn't what she says she is. Their ears twitched, they laughed, but uneasily. Unease spreads faster than laughter. By morning, unease had turned into suspicion. She could feel it in the way the guards' gazes swept over her, searching too long, in the way wolves moved aside when she walked by, as though expecting her to snap. In the kitchens, an elder wolf muttered just loud enough. No name, no lineage, no loyalty. Her chest tightened. She had worked so hard to fade into nothing. Yet nothing was becoming impossible to hold. When she passed the training yard, she froze. Cale stood with his lieutenants, blades flashing in the sun. His strikes were brutal, efficient, his command absolute, but he paused mid, swing when he felt her gaze, turning his head slowly. Their eyes locked, and for a heartbeat, she swore she saw more than Alpha steel. She saw warning. That night, she learned why. 2 wolves cornered her near the riverbank, their teeth flashing in cruel grins. What are you hiding, stray? A bastard's blood, a hunter's curse. Their words bit sharper than claws. She swallowed hard. Leave me. They laughed. Not until you tell us the truth. One reached for her, claws glinting. But before he could touch her, a snarl ripped through the darkness. Cale. He struck like lightning, throwing the wolves back with such force they scrambled in terror. His eyes burned, his wolf barely leashed. Touch her again, he growled, and I'll tear out your throats. The 2 fled, tails tucked, leaving silence and the sound of her uneven breathing. Cale turned to her, his chest rising and falling. Do you see? He demanded. Your silence paints a target on your back. They'll hunt you until you bleed. Her lips parted, but no words came, and then, softer, aching, tell me the truth before it destroys you. Her heart pounded. The river rushed, her secret clawed at her throat. Yet still, she could not speak it, not yet. The gathering fire burned high, casting long shadows across the pack grounds. Wolves stood in restless clusters, the air thick with suspicion. Every whisper scraped against her skin, every glance another blade. Kale stood at the center of it also, guard broad, shouldered, terrifying in his silence. His lieutenants waited for his word, but the pack had already chosen a side. Murmurs hissed like smoke, traitor, curse, bringer, outsider. Seleni's voice rose above them, sweetly venomous. We can't trust her, Alpha. She hides her name, she hides her blood. What wolf hides their blood unless it's shameful, the crowd stirred. Her stomach twisted, but she held her chin high. If she bowed now, she would never rise again. Kale's gaze swept over them, his scar catching the firelight, his eyes dark as the storm. When they landed on her, she felt the weight of them like chains. His wolf clawed beneath his skin, restless, demanding. He stepped forward, the air tightened. She is mine. The words fell like thunder. For a heartbeat, silence reigned, then gasps, then snarls, then disbelief. A dozen wolves protested at once, voices sharp with outrage. An outsider, unworthy, she'll bring ruin. Kale silenced them with one roar, the sound shaking the very earth. I am Alpha, he thundered. My word is law. She is my mate. No wolf will question it and live. Her breath caught, mate, spoken not as a whisper of fate, but as a decree of dominance. He had shackled her with his claim before the eyes of every wolf. Heat surged through her veins, tangled with fury, shame, and something more dangerous, desire. His voice carried like fire into her chest, igniting every part she had tried to bury, but the cost was ruinous. Seleni's face twisted, her claws curling as if to tear her apart. The pack exchanged uneasy glances, half in awe, half in rebellion. To claim a mate who had not yet accepted him, it was protection, but it was also chains. He stepped closer, his voice low for her alone. You are under my protection now. No wolf will touch you. His gaze pierced hers, burning, but you cannot run from me anymore. Her throat tightened. Protection, chains, a cage lined with fire. She should have fought him, should have shouted her rejection for all to hear. Yet the bond between them pulsed, undeniable, anchoring her to him even as fear clawed her chest. The wolves dispersed slowly, casting her looks heavy with envy and suspicion alike. The night ended with Kale's claim echoing like a vow written in blood, and though her lips never formed the words, her heart whispered the truth she hated. She was his, whether she willed it or not. The forest was colder than usual that night, the mist clinging like ghostly fingers to the trees. She had slipped away from the pack house, needing air, needing distance from the weight of Kale's public claim. His words still burned in her chest. She is mine. Her thoughts were so heavy, she didn't hear the wolves until it was too late. A rustle, a growl, the gleam of hostile eyes in the shadows. Rival scouts, lean and feral, moved with killing intent. One lunged, pain tore across her side as claws raked deep, hot blood spilling. She gasped, staggering back, vision blurring. She tried to fight, her wolf rising, snarling. But the wound weakened her and she faltered. The second strike never landed. Kale came like a storm. His roar shattered the night, and the rival wolves were thrown aside by sheer force. His fury was a living thing, his body a wall between her and death. In seconds, the ground was littered with groaning enemies, and he stood over them, blood steaming on his claws. Mine. He snarled at their retreating forms before turning sharply to her. Her knees buckled. He caught her, lowering her onto the moss. She felt his hands press against the gash, hot and unyielding. Stay with me. He growled, his voice rough with fear he couldn't hide. Don't you dare leave me. Her lashes fluttered. She wanted to push him away, tell him she didn't need him. But the warmth of his touch and the steel in his tone made the words dissolve. Then his breath caught. Blood slicked his fingers, and beneath it, something burned faintly in the moonlight. Not just skin, not just flesh, a mark, a sigil etched into her very being, glowing faintly gold, the crest of the lost royal pack. His eyes widened, stunned silence gripping him. He brushed more blood aside, and the shape sharpened, crown and moon entwined, a symbol no wolf alive could mistake. Kale's face shifted, fury and awe battling in his expression. You. His voice was hoarse, ragged. You carry royal blood. Her heart stuttered. She tried to cover it, weak hands trembling, but he seized her wrists. His eyes burned into hers, raw with questions and betrayal. You lied to me, to all of us. His grip trembled as though holding her both enraged him and anchored him. Tears welled in her eyes. I had no choice. She whispered, voice breaking, "If they knew who I was, I'd be dead already." His wolf snarled inside him, torn between tearing her apart and shielding her from the world. And in that clash of rage and destiny, a bond sealed tighter, sharper, more dangerous than before. For now he knew what she was, and he would never let her run again. The hall was suffocating with tension. Word had spread fast, too fast. She could feel the eyes of every wolf upon her as she stood near the hearth, Kale looming at her side like a storm contained only by sheer force of will. Whispers slithered through the crowd, royal blood. Liar, curse. Selene, lips curled in triumph, had disappeared earlier, and dread told her why. The truth was no longer hers to guard. The doors slammed open. A rival alpha strode inside. All cruel, his wolves fanning behind him like shadows. His voice was sharp as a blade. There she is, the last royal of the fallen Mooncrest line. Gasps rippled through the room. Wolves turned to her. Their suspicion hardened into betrayal. She froze throat tight. No denial would save her now. Kale stepped forward instantly, his body shielding hers. His growl reverberated through the hall. "You dare come into my territory and spit venom." The rival alpha only smirked, eyes gleaming with cruelty. "Not venom, truth. You think to bind yourself to her. Kale, you bind yourself to a curse." Her family's bloodline was slaughtered for good reason. Wherever royals walk, ruin follows. The crowd stirred again, unease shifting into fear. She could feel her own heart hammering as though it would burst from her ribs. She wanted to speak, to explain, but Kale's hand tightened around hers, silencing her. His touch was both an anchor and a command. The rival alpha prowled closer, gaze locked on her. "Tell them, girl, show them the mark. Or will you keep lying while death circles us all?" Her breath shook. The memory of Kale finding the crest on her side still burned in her mind. She hadn't chosen this moment, hadn't chosen any of it, and now it was being ripped from her, twisted as a weapon. Kale bared his teeth, voice low and deadly. "If you think you can turn my pack against me with your lies, try it, but you will not touch her." The rival's laugh echoed, hollow and cruel. "She doesn't need my touch. The truth is poison enough." All at once the room was a frenzy of voices. Fear, outrage, disbelief. Her heart cracked under the weight of it. Kale roared for silence, his power shaking the rafters. But even as the noise died, she saw it in their eyes, doubt. Selene reappeared in the crowd, smiling like a viper. Her whisper carried just far enough. "No alpha can save a cursed mate." The words sliced deeper than any claw. Her knees weakened, her pulse racing. Kale's grip on her hand only tightened, as if he knew. If he let go now, the pack might tear her apart. And in that instant she realized, this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was war. The night reeked of smoke and blood before the first howl split the air. The rival alpha hadn't come alone. His wolves poured from the tree line, snarling shadows against the moonlight, their eyes burning with hunger for war. Within moments, Kale's territory was a battlefield. Fangs clashing, claws ripping, the earth itself trembling under the fury of wolves unleashed. Kale stood at the front, every line of his scarred body radiating command. His roar tore across the grounds, summoning his pack to his side. They surged around him like a tide, answering his call with feral loyalty. But even with their numbers, the rival's wolves pressed hard, driven by hate, by the promise of royal blood spilled. She stood at the edge of the chaos, heart pounding, torn between terror and fury. For so long she had hidden, her name buried, her blood denied. Yet here, as wolves tore at each other in her name, hiding felt like the worst sin of all. A flash of silver claws lunged at her. She barely raised her arms before Kale intercepted, ripping the enemy down with savage precision. His chest heaved, blood streaking his jaw. His eyes locked on hers, burning. "Stand with me," he snarled, "not as prey, as what you are." Her breath caught. His demand was a vow, a plea, a challenge all at once. Something deep within her stirred, old, ancient, unbroken despite the years of silence. The crest on her side seared, pulsing like fire under her skin. Power she had smothered for so long rose, wild and demanding. The rival Alpha's voice rang above the clash. See how she cowers, a royal who hides behind others. No. She whispered, the word growing, deepening until it shook the air. No more. Her wolf surged forth, silver and radiant, bursting through her skin in a blaze of light. She shifted with a cry that was more than sound. It was memory, blood, destiny. Her form towered, sleek and gleaming, the golden crest burning on her fur. Every wolf froze. Even Kale's chest tightened with awe. The rival Alpha snarled, but his eyes flickered with fear. Cursed blood, he spat. I will end it here. He lunged at her, but she met him head on. Power exploded as their wolves clashed, his brute force against her blazing birthright. The ground scorched beneath them, air crackling with raw energy. Kale struck at the rival's flank, their strength united. Side by side, Alpha and Royal, they drove the enemy back. Blood sprayed, snarls thundered, and at last, with one final strike, she tore the rival Alpha down. Silence fell, broken only by ragged breaths and the whimper of defeated wolves slinking into the shadows. She stood tall, chest heaving, her fur shining like a beacon, and when her gaze met Kale's, a spark passed between them. Bond, recognition, something bigger than fate. The battlefield was theirs, but she knew the fight was not yet over, because now the world would see her, and they would never let her hide again. Dawn bled slowly across the battlefield, pale light washing over the bodies strewn across the earth. Smoke curled in lazy ribbons, the air heavy with iron and loss. She shifted back, trembling, her body bare and bloodied. The golden crest still glimmered faintly on her skin, undeniable proof of who she was. Around her, wolves bowed their heads in wary silence, some in reverence, others in fear. Kale stood at her side, his chest rising and falling with exhaustion. His scarred face was darker than the storm, yet his eyes never left her. You should have told me, he said at last, voice raw, her heart twisted. And would you have believed me, or would you have killed me like the others tried? His silence was answer enough. He stepped closer, reaching for her arm. For the first time, she didn't flinch. His hand was steady, warm, until it trembled. A jagged gasp ripped from his throat. He staggered, clutching his chest as though something inside him had snapped. Kale, she caught him, fear clawing up her spine. His skin burned under her touch, his body racked by unseen pain. The pack tensed, murmurs rippling, the curse. His knees buckled, but her arms held him. Don't fight it, she whispered fiercely. Let it break. For years, he had borne the shadow of a curse that chained his wolf, bleeding his strength in battle and scarring his soul. Now, with her bond thrumming between them, she felt it, the iron weight of it cracking. Her blood called to his, the crest on her body searing against his chest where it touched. Energy coursed between them like wildfire, burning, healing, unmaking the chains that bound him. His roar shook the morning sky. Wolves fell to their knees, covering their ears as the sound turned from agony into something primal, victorious, and then it was done. Kale lifted his head, sweat and blood streaking his skin, but his eyes were clear. No shadow lurked behind them, no tether held his wolf at bay. He was whole. She sagged with relief, tears spilling down her cheeks. You're free. He stared at her, a dozen emotions crashing across his scarred features, gratitude, fury, longing, awe. You did this, he rasped, your bond, your blood. Her chest ached, then you know why I had to hide. His thumb brushed her cheek, gentler than a warrior's hand should ever be. I know, and I will never let them break you. The moment was fragile, glowing like glass. But beneath it pulsed the truth neither of them could escape. The battle was won. The war for her heart, and for the throne, was only beginning. The night after the battle was quiet, almost unbearably so. The pack house was lit with low fires, wolves tending their wounds, whispers drifting like smoke. But for her, the silence was heavier than the clash of war. She stood alone at the balcony, the moon high above her, silver light spilling across her bare arms. Her thoughts circled endlessly, her name no longer hidden, Kale's curse shattered, the pack looking to her not as an orphan, but as a queen reborn. She should have felt triumph. Instead, She felt the weight of chains made not of iron, but of choice. The door creaked behind her. She didn't need to turn to know it was him. His presence filled the air like a storm rolling in, wild and uncontainable. Cale moved to stand beside her, his gaze fixed on the horizon. His chest was bare, bandages crisscrossing his scars, but he carried himself like a king of old. "You're still thinking of running," he said quietly, not an accusation. An understanding, her throat tightened. "You've bound me without my consent. You claimed me in front of them all. Do you know what that feels like?" His jaw flexed. "Do you know what it feels like to nearly lose you every time you step away?" His voice cracked, fierce and vulnerable. "I would rather chain you to me than watch you be destroyed by wolves who see you as nothing but a prize." Her chest ached. The anger she'd carried for days clashed with the truth her heart couldn't deny, the bond that pulsed between them like a living flame. She whispered, "You terrify me." His hand brushed hers, tentative, rough from battle. "And yet you are the only thing in this world that makes me want to be more than a monster." Her breath hitched. His words unraveled her defenses, thread by thread. He turned then, facing her fully, his scarred face etched with shadows and light. His eyes burned, not with dominance now, but with raw plea. "Selene, royal, orphan, mate, whatever name you choose, you are mine, not because I decreed it, but because the bond won't let me breathe without you." Tears slipped down her cheeks. For so long she had feared her blood, her truth, her fate. Yet here he stood, unbroken, unafraid, offering not a crown or chains, but his heart. She stepped closer, her hand trembling as it pressed against his chest, where his heartbeat thundered wild and sure. "I am yours," she whispered finally, fully, "not because you claimed me, because I choose you." His wolf howled through him, the sound raw and exultant, echoing into the night. He swept her into his arms, his mouth finding hers in a kiss that was fire and vow, sealing what destiny had written long ago. The moon bore witness as Alpha and Royal stood together, not as curse and secret, but as mates, bonded in blood, power, and love. And for the first time she felt no need to hide her name, because beside him it was a crown. The pack grounds had changed. Where there had once been fear, suspicion, and whispered curses, now there was rebuilding. Wolves worked side by side, mending walls, planting roots, finding peace in the ashes of war. And at the center of it all stood Cale and the woman who was no longer a nameless orphan. She stood on the steps of the pack house, her hair spilling loose under the moonlight, the crest of her bloodline shimmering faintly at her collarbone. No longer hidden, no longer feared, tonight her pack, their pack, gathered to honor what had been forged through blood and fire. Cale appeared at her side, his presence grounding, his arm brushing against hers. His scars no longer looked like marks of a curse. They looked like the map of a warrior who had survived every trial fate hurled his way. A hush fell over the wolves as he spoke, his voice steady as stone. "You know who she is now, you know what she is, and still she stands here. Not as a secret, not as a curse, but as your Luna, your queen." Her chest swelled, tears stinging her eyes. For so long she had run from her blood, from her destiny. Yet now, standing before the pack with Cale's hand entwined with hers, she realized she had not been running from danger. She had been running from herself. She lifted her chin, her voice ringing clear. "I am not the shadow of a fallen line. I am its future, and I will fight for this pack as fiercely as I fought for my life." The wolves bowed their heads in unison, one by one, until the entire clearing knelt in silent reverence. For the first time, she felt their acceptance not as a burden, but as a bond. Cale's gaze slid to hers, fierce and tender all at once. "This is ours," his eyes said, "not throne or crown, home." Later, when the fires burned low and the pack celebrated beneath the stars, he drew her aside. They stood in the meadow where the moon touched the earth like silver paint. "You are mine," he murmured, voice raw with the same truth he had spoken the night he claimed her. But now there was no chain in the words, only devotion. Her fingers traced the scar at his jaw, her lips curving into a smile. "And you are mine." His mouth claimed hers, slow and certain, sealing what war and destiny had already written. The moon shone brighter, as though blessing them both. And in that moment, she understood. She had not lost her name when her family fell. She had carried it, guarded it, until the night she found the one man strong enough to share its weight. The last royal of Mooncrest was no longer alone. She was Alpha's mate, she was Luna, she was home,